Welcome back, everybody, to 31 1980s horror movies for Halloween, where I'm counting down my favorite horror movies from the 1980s. We're going to Italy again, and we're dealing with Lucio Fulci again. One of my favorite directors, so yep, he's back. Here we have one of Lucio Fulci's most brutal, mean-spirited movies, and the fact that it's so mean-spirited is one of the reasons it's so great. Today we're looking at my favorite Lucio Fulci Giallo movie, The New York Ripper. This is a gnarly movie, and like I said, it's a very mean-spirited movie, but again, that's what makes it so great. New York Ripper is a movie about a killer going around New York City, murdering women. That's essentially the plot of it, and that's really all it is. But it's such a simple movie, but so well done, and so fucking gory. This has some of the most brutal kills I've seen in any Giallo movie. The thing about New York Ripper is there's a goofy trait that the killer has, which could turn some people off to this movie. The killer quacks like a duck, and that's not an exaggeration. He literally quacks and talks in a goofy duck voice. But the thing about this movie is, as silly as that sounds, as the movie goes on, we find out the killer's motivation in the third act, and we learn why he talks in that silly duck voice, and it goes from being really silly and goofy into very tragic. The fact that this killer talks in this duck voice and learning why this killer talks in this duck voice makes him one of the most tragic killers in Giallo movies or slasher movies. But the main thing that makes New York Ripper stand out is its brutal kills. And like I said, these are just very mean-spirited kills. He doesn't just kill these women, he tears them apart. And you hear about some of these kills and you see them and they look painful, and then you hear about them afterwards, which makes them even more painful.
He used a blade. He stuck it up her joy trail and slit her wide open. He could have done a slightly better job if he'd had more time.
New York Ripper has one of my favorite Lucio Fulci kills, as well as, I would say, the most brutal kill in any Lucio Fulci movie. If not the most brutal, it's at least one of the most brutal. There's a prostitute tied to a bed, and the killer cuts her up with a razor blade. It's a small razor blade, but he just completely destroys this woman with this one razor blade, and it's a hard scene to watch. It's a very rough death, but that's what makes it so effective, because it's just like, it's a little razor blade. You would not expect a little razor blade to be such an intimidating weapon, but the way the killer uses it during this scene, it makes it one of the most frightening weapons used in a horror movie. And the added element is this prostitute who he's cutting up is sleeping with the detective who's looking for the killer. And the killer calls the detective up on the phone and tells him, "I'm going to kill this woman. You have not a lot of time to get here to save her." So he's rushing over to save this woman while the killer is cutting her up. It's suspenseful and disturbing at the same time.
Lieutenant Williams?
Speaking. What do you want?
To dedicate a killing to you. Gonna sacrifice a woman just for you.
This is another city-based horror movie, and cities are my favorite location for horror movies, and New York is a perfect setting for a horror movie. There are a lot of great New York-based horror movies, and it adds that extra element that makes me love movies. It's that extra element I love. You use my favorite setting in a horror movie, it's going to take it up another notch for me. But going back to the kills, what I love about Lucio Fulci is he doesn't just give you violent, brutal kills, he adds suspense in his kills, like the scene where the prostitute is getting killed, and in movies we're going to talk about later on this list. He mixes suspense, atmosphere, and bloody kills to make for some great, great horror movies. Yes, New York Ripper is a mean-spirited horror movie, but it is a good horror movie. It's not going to be for everyone, so I won't recommend people watch it for Halloween unless you're a die-hard Italian horror fan. If you're curious of checking it out for Halloween, by all means check it out, but I mean, it's a movie you have to understand what you're getting into before you watch it. Still, it's a good Italian horror movie, and if you're an Italian horror fan and you like very violent movies, you will like New York Ripper.